Alright, so this is my commander deck. Aminatou, the Fateshifter. If you don't know what she does, she's a planeswalker. She comes in with 3 loyalty counters, and her +1 is draw a card, and then put a card from your hand on top of your library. Her -1 is exile another target permanent you own, then return it to the battlefield under your control. And her -6 is choose left or right. Each player gains control of all non-land permanents other than Aminatou the Fateshifter controlled by the next player in the chosen direction. So this is a Aminatou deck built around using a few different win conditions, one of which is a Doomsday pile leading into Thassa's Oracle. It can also use Ad Nauseam Angel's Grace to get to that win condition, as well as Angel's Grace and Spoils of the Vault. Demonic Consultation is also used to finish off the combo if necessary. It runs Lindell's Vault to help set up things, as well as Plunge into Darkness for card advantage. Here's an example Doomsday pile. Doomsday is a card, if you're unfamiliar with it in EDH, where you pay half your life, rounded up, and you put your graveyard on top of your library, and then you remove all but 5 cards from your library from the game. You put those 5 cards on top of your library in any order. An example Doomsday pile we have would be Thassa's Oracle. Can really end up anywhere in these. I like to put it, depending on what I'm using, I like to put it directly underneath the Brainstorm or one card below it if I'm using a Karn to get there, or if I'm using Aminatou to just draw the card and put something else from hand on top of the library, I'll just put it right on top. But either way, it's a bunch of 1-mana blue spells that you can quickly cast, and then cast the Thassa's Oracle, or cast the Thassa's Oracle when you already meet the requirements for it. We have Recruiter of the Guard and Ranger-Captain of Eos, which both are used to search up Spark Double, if you ever need to get that out on board. This is one of the alternative value engines, I guess you'd say. It's either Spark Double and Oath of Teferi with Aminatou, or Feldar Guardian, Panharmonicon Aminatou, or Feldar Guardian, Oath of Teferi, Aminatou. Any of those 3 combinations will get you infinite Aminatou activations, infinite activations of all your planeswalkers, infinite untapping of all your lands, and a bunch of other just generally good stuff. We run a small suite of search cards in the library, including a Grim Tutor, Enlightened Tutor, Mystical Tutor, Idyllic Tutor, and then there's also a Scheming Symmetry in the deck, which a lot of people probably don't think is best for this kind of list, but it helps. It's very useful. And it's always just fun to grab that and then throw the War of the Spark Ashiok on top of your library, draw it, play it, and then mill your opponent the card that they search just out of spite. Dick move, but you can do it. We run a Necropotence in the deck, because card advantage is just generally good all around, and a land tax, because while this deck only runs 6 basic lands, removing those 6 basic lands will give you a lot more consistency when you're actually playing the game. We have Ashiok Nightmare Weaver, which is the Japanese alternate art. This is our planeswalkers for the deck. Teferi Time Reveler, Narset Part of the Veils, Karn Sign of Urza, Karn the Great Creator, Teferi Master of Time, Tamiyo the Moon Sage, Ashiok Nightmare Muse, and Teferi Hero of Dominaria. Now, I do run a Manifold Insights as extra draw in the deck. There are probably better things to run over this, like I could probably run a Ristic Study or something, but I don't want to spend the money on that. So I run this. It's 1 mana less than Fact or Fiction, and it gets me to see 10 cards over the 5 of a fact. Overwhelmed Apprentice, Charming Prince, and Fairy Seer are just very cheap, very useful utility scry engines. This deck relies on scrying a lot to throw things on the bottom of the library that are irrelevant during that turn. Muldrifter draws cards. I don't run Flicker in the deck, like I don't run the actual card Flicker or any effects like that, and like no Cloud Shifts here. I hardcast this guy all the time. Peregrine Drake is, effectively replaces the Panharmonicon in this and just gives me value. Tribute Mage searches up some of our mana rocks when we need them. It's the only thing it's in the deck for, is thinning out the deck and pulling out mana rocks when we play it. These are our mana rocks and lands. We run 2 talismans. I don't run all 3 in this list, mainly because I don't have the third one. Third one being I think it's another one from Mirrodin, the blue-white, and I don't remember the name of it. so that's why I don't have it. We have 4 arcanes, or 4 signets. We have Arcane Signet, Azorius Signet, Dimir Signet, and Norzhov Signet in the list. 1 Mana Vault, and 1 Soul Ring. I run Tainted Field. I run, as you can see, 2 Swamps, 2 Islands, and 2 Plains. Polluted Delta, Flooded Strand, Marsh Flats, Windswept Heath, Fabled Passage, and Prismatic Vista are the fetch lands that I've chosen to run. There are others that can be run. I run all 3 of the Pain lands, as you can see. I run Silent Clearing, which I believe is the only one of these lands that is available in Esper, unfortunately. I run both Sunken Hollow and Prairie Stream, Darkwater Catacombs, Skycloud Expanse, a Scrubland and a Tundra. I don't own an Underground Sea because I'm not rich. We run Hallowed Fountain, Watery Grave, Godless Shrine, and then we have our utility lands down here, and we'll get to these guys in a minute. So we have, for any color mana, we have City of Brass, Command Tower. For utility, we have Sanctum of Eternity, Hall of Heliod's Generosity, Pachuca Bog, and Piranha Marsh. Piranha Marsh is an interesting include because it can turn into a win condition with the Infinite Flickering. That's the main reason it's in the deck. Now we have these Scry lands, which a lot of people might think, well, why do you want a land that comes into play tap when every other land in the deck doesn't? Well, because these lands, when they enter, they let you scry, which means you can throw a card at the bottom of your library, which means if you get Infinite Flickering off, you can choose what you're drawing every single turn, which is good, and a useful ability to have. So, these are our protection, and just generally annoying things for our opponents that's in the deck. We have a Lavinia, Azorius Renegade, which is always a fun early game play. If you draw in the late game, it's usually not going to do much, it'll probably be a blocker. Arcane Denial, Swan Song, Fierce Guardianship, just basic counterspells, and then we run Counterbalance, and this deck does, to pilot this deck properly, you usually have to be able to either guess, or I guess more, what's the word, predict the type of spells that your opponents are going to be playing on their curve or trying to play, because you're going to do a lot of top deck manipulation with Aminatou's first ability. You're also going to be doing a lot of flickering. This deck, unlike a lot of Aminatou builds I've seen, it focuses on both her +1 and her -1. Her -6 not so much, but you can get there. Temporal Mastery is in the deck just because it's always fun to throw that on top of your library off of a Scheming Symmetry or a Mystical Tutor and just get an extra turn for free, basically, because it's 2 mana, and 2 mana is nothing in this deck. One of the main selling points of Aminatou, I believe, is her ability to run Esper and be able to flicker your lands to gain an additional mana, effectively turning your turn 4 into a turn 5, which is always a good thing. So you can do things like Hallowed Burial on turn 5. You could also search up Terminus with a Scheming Symmetry or Mystical Tutor. Terminus and Temporal Mastery are the only miracle spells I'm running in this list. Phyrexian Scriptures in the deck. Generally I don't flicker it, but you can flicker it with Aminatou multiple times to set up multiple turns of board wiping or pump a creature. Elspeth Conquers Death, again similarly to Phyrexian Scriptures, since it is a saga, you can exile multiple permanents with it. You can make it so your opponents are going to have a hard time casting their spells, and then finally if your Aminatou or any of your other planeswalkers die, you get to bring them back. Leadership Vacuum is just generally good for taking care of pesky commanders that have hexproof, like, you know, a Narset. Say your opponent has a Narset, Leadership Vacuum it away. It's just good. Reality Acid, interesting card. It's when it leaves play, the enchanted permanent's controller sacrifices. Now you do have to pay attention to the vanishing on this card. So you have a 3-turn clock to flicker it, but you know, once it's out in play, generally no permanents on your opponent's board state are safe unless they have hexproof. Deadly Rollick speaks for itself. It's a free spell that exiles a creature. It's just good. Swords Plowshare and Path to Exiles, just very basic good cards. And it's pretty much the deck. It's fun. It doesn't look as powerful as it is, but it'll get you there.